Eric Roberts has well over 700 TV and movie appearances, soon to be over 800. I don't know who can match that number, some kind of Olympic record in Hollywood. It would take a year to cover this much ground, and so, to preserve your and my sanity, I will do my best to keep this show on a track. This video will be structured around events and choices that were important to Eric, including the roles he was most interested in and what led him in a direction that almost ruined his life and career, hanging right at the edge of the cliff. Eric's journey is like one of those movie scenes where, at the end, the audience exhales in relief. Thank God he found the brake pedal just in time, with only the front end of the car hanging over the abyss. Eric went quantity over quality a long time ago and has no regrets or illusions about it. He often goes on the record to describe some of his role choices as not a good film. So he is fully aware of his decisions and doesn't hide the fact that it is impossible to be in these many movies with more than 2/3 of them being subpar. This is each actor's choice, and I have nothing but respect for this kind of work ethic. But to be honest, some of those late movies make trash films look like a gem. It's that bad. And for other movies, Eric's name and his face is used to simply attract potential ticket buyers for a few minutes of Robert's screen time. Fortunately, this charade comes much later in his career. Now, you've got to understand where Eric came from. Back in Atlanta, his dad wasn't just any theater guy. He was running an amazing program called the Actors Writers Workshop, backed by the Martin Luther King Foundation. Every weekend, they would take the theater to the streets, bring in show to neighborhood that never got to see this kind of things. And little Eric, he was soaking in it all, watching how performance could light up people's eye. Talk about masterclass in keeping it real. Speaking of his early life, Eric Roberts opens up about a part of his past he was instructed to keep under wraps. Here is the real story behind his place of birth. A long time ago, Eric's dad told him to tell a different story because he was raised to not present himself as the poor white folks they were. Eric's parents were in the Air Force, and he was born in Kistler Air Force Base in Biloxi, Mississippi. However, his father guided him to tell a different version of events when asked about his origins. I was guided by my father when I was sent out into the real world and say that my mother was on her way, New Orleans, from Atlanta, went into labor, and they brought the plane down at Kistler Air Force Base, he explains. So that's why it's on my birth certificate. Eric was instructed to avoid mentioning his parents' Air Force background. Don't ever tell people that your parents are in the Air Force, his father would say. When Eric asked why, his father's response was clear: because it's not good. Pressing further, Eric was told, because it's poor. With that, Eric accepted the narrative he was given. So for years I told the press the lie, Eric admits. Introduction to theater and TV. Robert's dad started his theater formally in 1963, but it really kicked off back in 1961. He explains that his father's venture into theater began modestly and grew into something more formal around 1963. His father landed a local TV series slot on Sunday morning called Bam Bam and His Buddies. This show, which ran from 10 to 10:30 a.m., featured a clown named Bam Bam who introduced different dramas and comedies each week. Bam Bam was a clown with a derby, a tux that was too big, big feet, and smiley face. And Bam Bam was Eric's mom. Even though Eric had already done plays in theater, this was his introduction to being on camera. The show only ran for one season, producing about 22 episodes, but it was a significant experience for Eric. He did his first play at 4 years old, playing a mute clown in a toy box in a Christmas play. By the time he was 8, Eric was already playing significant roles such as John Henry West, Charlie in You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown and Snoopy in another production. He was doing all kinds of real theater, and it was a really good time for him. When asked about his parents' separation, Eric Roberts recalls that it started falling apart when he was 13, but they were finally separated for good when he was 15 years old. Eric explains that his sisters went with their mother while he stayed with his father. They were 3 and 5, and I was a teenager. Eric was more than a decade older than his sister Julia Roberts at that time. Eric's journey after high school is equally fascinating. After graduating in 1974, Eric spent some time in Europe exploring the theater scenes before returning to New York City. The first place he stayed in New York was YMCA on the Upper West Side. For those unfamiliar, Eric explains, the YMCA is you live on the streets and then there is YMCA, but it's cleaner. He arrived in New York with no money or connections. Eric's path to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts came through a local audition in Atlanta. Somebody was there from the American Academy and I got in. My father bought me a plane ticket and off I went. As Eric describes, it was really exciting. I was too stupid and happy to be scared of any of it. I was just going. Believe it or not, just a few years later, King of the Gypsies was out. It was about 1,000 days between his arrival and his first big movie production. It is unbelievable how quickly things unfolded for Eric. What's particularly striking about Roberts' early approach was his dedication to theater. While cutting his teeth in Atlanta's regional theater scenes, he wasn't just doing one type of role. He was tackling everything from commercial theater to Shakespeare. This versatility would later become one of his trademarks. His father, who passed away just shy of his 44th birthday in December 1977, was Eric's support system. Losing him was tough, especially since he did not get to see Eric's big break in King of the Gypsies. Eric got the role shortly after his father's death. And while the success was exhilarating, it came with its challenges. Moving to New York from Atlanta was a bold move for young Eric. He found an apartment in Flatbush for $160 a month, worked as a delivery boy, and hustled his way to success. By the time he had it, he was able to help his young sisters, including Julia Roberts, whom he taught to read, write, and swim. Despite their 12 years age difference, Eric was a hero to his sisters. When Eric's father passed away, Eric was just 21 years old. His death missed seeing Eric's breakthrough by just a month, which made the success bittersweet. People often assume that he was an instant millionaire with endless resources, but the reality was far from it. Navigating his newfound fame while managing expectations and relationships was a balancing act. Despite working alongside powerhouses like Sterling Hayden and Shelley Winters, he managed to hold his own. What was the most memorable lesson he learned? When Shelley Winters accidentally drank gasoline on set, one of those bizarre Hollywood moments that never made it on the screen. For some odd reason, a wine bottle prop was filled with gasoline, and when she grabbed it and took a sip, instead of going crazy, she simply improvised by throwing herself on the floor and yelling, "I have been poisoned." Too bad they did not include it into the movie. It was an excellent improvisation. Eric had this remarkable perspective about his craft, stating that you can't just go and be an actor anymore, that you can just go and be an engineer. Instead, he emphasized the importance of preparation, or as he puts it, getting ready to get ready to get ready. It's the kind of insight you rarely hear from young actors. What's particularly telling is his early career choices. Eric was already turning down roles in films like The Warriors, The Wanderers to avoid typecasting, a surprisingly mature decision for a newcomer. Even more interesting is that he was being considered for Godfather 3, but he was more interested in diverse projects like Urban Cowboy. From his early days, you can clearly see the foundation being laid for his enduring career. That's a self-awareness and dedication to the craft that set him apart from his peers. It's a reminder that sometimes the most interesting stories in Hollywood aren't about overnight success, but about a thoughtful, deliberate choices that build a lasting career. King of the Gypsies. How did Eric Roberts land the role in this movie? First, he had to audition for it several times. Then Eric and another 4 candidates were invited to get the screen test. The screening took place at the Golf and Western Building. The night before, he couldn't even sleep, too much anxiety. Next morning, when he got out of home, New York was covered in snow. It was snowing all night, and it kept snowing to the point that you can't see the sidewalks and all the traffic stops. From 73rd Street and Central Park West, it was about 13 blocks to walk down to Golf Western Building. Eric walks through a city-turned ghost town by the snowstorm. No traffic, it's like a dead town. Like a ghost town. He gets down to the Golf of Western Building on foot, and of course, they're behind on schedule because of the snow. They told Eric that your screen test will not be as scheduled. It will be later, so just wait and relax in the other room. Eric goes in somebody's office and decided to take a nap. And he slept until they woke him up for the test. As for the wardrobe, Eric was asked to wear full-length leather jacket over his clothes for the screen test. Eric puts on the jacket and steps onto the set. Heart is pounding loud, nerves dancing in his chest. The set is nothing but a stool. He looked up, there is Frank Pearson smiling. Eric pointed at the stool and asked if he should use it or not. Roberts is just 20 years old and a nervous wreck. Use it or not is up to you, he was told. So Eric makes a decision to ignore it, because it was too low and it would turn his screen test into a comedy sketch. Frank Pearson's words as Eric exits the scene were, "You're a very fine actor." "Thank you, Mr. Pearson," said Eric and left the room. 3 days later, Roberts was told he got the part in King of the Gypsies. Paul's Case is a TV movie from 1980 based on Willa Cather's short story, and it stars a young Eric Roberts as Paul. The movie dives into some deep stuff like feeling stuck in a boring life, wanting more, and figuring out who you really are. This was one of Eric Roberts' early gigs. He brings Paul's inner turmoil and big dreams to life in a way that really hits home. You can feel his longing for a better life and the joy he finds in his brief escape, even though you know it can't last. Paul's Case isn't just a story about one guy's dream and mistakes. It's a look at whatever happens when the reality you're stuck in just doesn't match the life you wish for. And with Roberts in the lead, it's a gripping watch that shows off his talent even early in his career. Eric Roberts' role in Raggedy Man showcased a side of him that audience didn't often see, a gentle, sweet, and heroic figure. In this film, he wasn't the intense, brooding presence many associate with his career. Instead, he was warm, approachable, and undeniably kind. "You are sweet, you are nice, you are always smiling, you are good to the kids, you are good to her, you are a sailor." There is nothing dangerous about that character, one might say, when describing Eric's portrayal. His character only shows anger when the girls are threatened in the bar, but even then it's protective, not menacing. It's a departure from the edgier roles he's often known for. And that is exactly what he wanted to play, Eric Roberts' side that people don't know. When discussing the film, Eric emphasizes the significance of working with Sissy Spacek and the visionary direction of Jack Fisk, her husband. It was Sissy's first movie after her Oscar for Coal Miner's Daughter. And Jack Fisk? What a director, what a guy, what a leader. "What a cool guy to work with," says Roberts. Eric's admiration for Fisk is evident, but there is a tinge of regret in his voice when he recalls how the film was altered in post-production. From Eric's exit on, it's a different movie. They made it into kind of neo-horror film. Fisk's original version was compromised. Robert's final take on it is, it was a delicate, glorious good movie, and it ended up being okay, but it wasn't the same. Jack is a great filmmaker, he got undermined. By the way, Eric based his character on two real people from his life, the boys that he grew up with, Irvin White and his first cousin, Adam Bowles. In the movie, Eric talks like Adam, but he is romantic like Irvin. The car accident. In the glittering yet treacherous world of Hollywood, few stories capture the raw essence of rise, fall, and redemption quite like Eric Roberts. The 1980s Hollywood was awash in substances, and Roberts found himself deeply entangled in its web. Movie sets became more than just workplaces. They were playgrounds of addiction. You would go to the prop truck, Roberts recalls painting a vivid picture of that era, and there would be lots of mirrors with powder. From executive producers to craft service workers, everyone was riding the white wave, a destructive tide that would nearly claim Roberts' life. 1981 marked a devastating turning point. High on drugs, Roberts crashed his car in an accident so severe it left him in coma for 3 days. The accident left him with head injuries and brain trauma. The aftermath was brutal. He had to learn the basic functions of living, walking, and talking. The crash left permanent scars, not just physical but neural. "I knocked a lot of stuff out of my brain," he admits, "and it isn't coming back." It took him 30 years to accept the new reality. The recovery was intense. Eric spent about 90 days just rehabbing, but it was just the beginning. Robert spent the next 10 years in both physical and mental recovery. His memory was a constant struggle. It was at its worst when he came back from the hospital. Eric came home and brushed his teeth, put down his toothbrush, washed out mouth, and did not know where his toothbrush was. That's how bad it was. The emotional toll was equally heavy. Eric would sob every day over self-pity because he's an actor, and with no ability to remember lines, he's ruined. But you know what? He worked really hard to get back, though ultimately getting on terms with his own self that he would never be 100% of what he used to. Some damages just couldn't be repaired, and you have to adapt to new reality. But the most devastating cost wasn't his career or his health. It was the relationship with his daughter, Emma Roberts. The custody loss became what he calls the biggest consequences of his life choice. In a twist of fate, it was his sister Julia who stepped in, ensuring Emma had a stable environment during those turbulent years. Today, Robert speaks about Julia and Emma's relationship with the genuine joy, a far cry from the competitive undertones of his early years. Looking back at interviews from nearly 40 years ago, Robert sees the same spirit in himself today. "I still feel the same way that kid felt," he reflects. But there is a crucial difference: wisdom. When you get older, your priorities change. All you need is love. When you give that, share that, enjoy that, you will wallow in it. You will be okay. Star 80. In 1983, Roberts lands his role in Star 80, Dark Stuff. He's playing this seriously messed up character who killed his girlfriend, a Playboy model. Most actors would have been freaked out about getting typecast as the bad guy, but Roberts? He just saw it as a chance to dig deep into a complex character. Eric Roberts' journey into Star 80 is a fascinating mix of intensity, preparation, and raw emotion. The film dives deep into the toxic cocktail of fame, power, and insecurity. The movie, directed by Bob Fosse, is known for its gritty portrayal of the real-life tragedy surrounding Playboy model Dorothy Stratton. But behind the scenes, the process was just as compelling. Fosse didn't just cast me, he immersed me, Eric recalls. We spent 6 weeks together before we even started shooting. It wasn't casual. He was force-feeding me everything he demanded: time, place, attitude, habits. He wanted me to live and breathe Paul Snider. The meticulous nature of Fosse's direction extended to the film's locations. Everything in that movie is shot where it really happened. The mansion, where she was killed, all of it. They had to get Hef's approval for everything, and somehow Fosse was able to make it all happen. That's part of his genius. Fosse understood the human condition so well. He knew how to make people feel at ease, even when dealing with a story as dark as this one. He made Eric realize Paul Snider wasn't unusual. He was a dime a dozen. We are surrounded by Paul Sniders every day, Fosse told Roberts during his prep work. The challenge for Eric was somehow to humanize a character that the world saw as a monster. When I played him, I understood him. I was there for him. You can't play a bad guy thinking they're really bad. They always have their reasons, their justifications. Paul thought he had to do what he did. Unfortunately, he went too far and he knew it, said Eric Roberts about his character. Reflecting on the film's impact, Eric notes, "It's the best docudrama ever made." Fosse told a great story not just about murder, but about the human condition, about what happens when show business, sex, and power collide. It was hard on Hollywood, and it's not a popular film because it doesn't pull any punches. But that's what makes this movie so brilliant. Okay, to brighten mood up a little bit, here is a funny Broadway story. This one is wild. Robert steps into this role that John Malkovich just crushed it in. Now, most actors would be shaking in their boots trying to copy what worked before. Not Roberts. He is backstage, literally throwing up from nerves, but he's still thinking, you know what? Malkovich didn't quite get it right. I will rewrite the character my way. And he did just that. His own interpretation. The audacity, right? But that's exactly what made Roberts special. He always did his own thing. Alright, let's get into an unforgettable story about Eric Roberts and one of his most iconic roles, the Pope of Greenwich Village. This tale is all about how Eric prepared for one of the most emotionally charged scenes of his career, and it's a good one. So if you have ever seen the Pope of Greenwich Village, you'll remember that gut-wrenching scene where Polly, played by Eric, walks in and says,
"Charlie, they took my phone, man."
It's a performance that sticks with you, right? But how did Eric get into that headspace? How do you prepare to be so emotionally raw and vulnerable on screen? Eric says it's all about becoming the character. You have to go to that place mentally, emotionally, and even spiritually. It's about finding the reality of the moment, the time, the space, and just living it. For Eric, the pain of losing a thumb wasn't just acting. It was about making the audience believe it was real. And oh boy, did we believe it. But here is the thing. Eric doesn't just wing it. He prepares a lot. He had this role for 8 months before they started shooting. He lost 30 pounds, permed his hair, learned the script inside out, and showed up ready to rock. He wanted Paulie to be this walking spaz attack, as Eric says. A guy who wants to be a tough gangster, but he isn't. He's trying so hard to be something he isn't. And that's what Eric wanted to play with. Now, the director had a different vision. He saw Paulie as a straightforward thug, a tough, dumb guy who walks into walls. But Eric had already committed to his take on Paulie. So when the director asked him to resign because of their creative differences, Eric was like, "Let me think about it." But in his mind, no way was he giving up on Paulie. Eric went to Mickey Rourke's room, yeah, Mickey Rourke, the guy who played Charlie, and told him what's up. Mickey called the producer, who had already told Eric he could play Paulie the way he wanted. Producers handled it well. The director, who wanted Eric to resign, was replaced by Stuart Rosenberg, who was all about Eric's take on Paulie. He embraced it, enhanced it, and let Eric shine. And here is the best part. When Eric nailed that emotional scene, the one with the "they took my thumb" line, the crew applaud. And if you know anything about filmmaking, you know that when the crew claps, it's like getting a standing ovation on Broadway. It's an ultimate validation because those are the people who sees everything, know everything, and when they are impressed, you know you have nailed it. Speaking of film crew, they are the coolest peeps, says Eric. Always funny, approachable, and hardworking. I would always sit at a table and eat with the crew. Actors come and go, but crew are always the same. Eric Roberts' journey with Paulie in The Pope of Greenwich Village is a masterclass in commitment, passion, and believing in your own vision as an actor. It's a reminder that sometimes sticking to your guns can lead to unforgettable performance. The Coca-Cola Kid. Eric Roberts reflects fondly on his time filming The Coca-Cola Kid, calling it a kind of a paid vacation due to the fun and laid-back atmosphere. It was so likable, he says. He describes the settings as incredible, with Sydney providing a beautiful backdrop. Great location, great people, Eric recalls, adding that he loved working with the director Dusan and his cast. The decision to join the film was easy for Eric. Dusan wanted Roberts to be in his movie, so he made an offer. Eric read the script one time and said yes that very day. It was an odd little tale, he adds, explaining that at that time he had just wrapped The Pope of Greenwich Village and was eager to take on something different to showcase his range. Despite his excitement, he admits that at that time no one really cared about his versatility, but he was eager to prove he could do it all. Eric really liked Dusan's shooting style, noting that he never overshot. He only shoot when he needed, and our days were never long. They were always very civilized, and we made a good movie, he says. Eric's living situation in Australia added to the dreamlike experience. I had an apartment with a big glass window as big as a wall overlooking the ocean, he recalls. It was movie star time. It was really special. One thing that stuck with Eric was the contrast between American and Australian culture. Americans are not as nice as we think we are, Australians are, he says, reflecting on how approachable and polite the Australians he met were. They were wonderful, they were sweet, and they were funny. We're kind of arrogant and in love with ourselves. He admits that seeing the contrast made him feel disappointed in his fellow countrymen, but he was grateful for the experience of being around such warm and welcome people. Lastly, because of the Coca-Cola brand in the movie, approval was required for any use of their name. Everything had to go by them, Eric says. For some reason, they allowed it. I'm shocked because it wasn't negative about Coke, but it was offbeat. The movie Runaway Train was a game changer for Eric Roberts. This wasn't just another film. It was the one that earned him an Academy Award nomination. The movie director Konchalovsky gave Eric complete freedom in shaping his character. The character is a tough guy as written. In a nutshell, Eric wanted character to be stupid but likable stupid, not irritating stupid. Roberts asked if he can change the accent. Konchalovsky said, "Whatever you want, you do it." The result was a character that stood out, a testament to Eric's range and creativity. I had a great time. John Voight and I had so much fun making the movie together. We are two actors acting, and we had fun every single day we worked together. I fell in love with him as an actor. I will always treasure that experience with John as an actor. But the shoot was not cakewalk in the park. It was rather physically demanding. It was hard. It was cold. Very cold. Here is an interesting fun fact. Eric Roberts was the one who basically got Danny Trejo into the movie business. One day a writer asked Eric if he can get a Mexican guy with tattoos to be his boxing partner in the movie. Danny was out of prison, where he was just a little less than a year. So, when candidates were lined up for a pick, Eric pointed at one guy who was described to him by the writer to have a very particular tattoo. And that was Danny Trejo, who he became friends with ever since. When Danny was asked by director if it's okay for Eric during one of those close-up scenes to hit him in the face, Danny replied, "For the amount of money they pay me to be in this movie, he can shoot me in the face." That's Danny for you, funny guy. To Heal a Nation is 1988 TV movie telling the true story of Jen Scruggs, played by Eric Roberts and his journey to create the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. The movie follows Jen as he fights against the odds, rallying support and navigating through his challenges to make the memorial reality. It isn't just about the memorial itself, but about healing and recognition for the veterans who felt forgotten or misunderstood. Eric Roberts brings an emotional depth to Jen. You can feel his passion and determination as he works tirelessly to honor his comrades. Roberts makes you root for Jen every step of the way, showing both the emotional and physical toll this mission takes on him. Best of the best. This is one of those classic martial arts films from the late 80s that holds a special place in action movie fans' hearts. Released in 1989, it stars Eric Roberts as Alex, a martial artist with a lot on the line. The movie revolves around a team of American martial artists who came together to compete against a powerhouse Korean team in a high-stake tournament. Why did Eric pick up a role in martial arts movie? Considering he didn't do anything like that, nor wasn't one of the known actors in this kind of genre. The simple answer is, it was fun to try. Eric's father was into martial art, so naturally Eric couldn't help but take some lessons as well. Everything about the movie, the script, the cast, Roberts loved. More importantly, it wasn't a typical cookie-cutter martial art film. It has a lot of heart and soul in it. By the way, Eric does not have any belts in martial arts, despite the fact he has been in dojo with jiu-jitsu master for over 30 years. On the books, he has got as far as into advanced green in Taekwondo. That is according to Eric himself. The movie became a bit of a cult hit, spawning several sequels. It wasn't just about the action, but the themes of perseverance, teamwork, and honor. And Eric's long flowing hair in the movie, that was vibe in itself. Movie The Ambulance is out of control 1990 action thriller directed by the one and only Larry Cohen. And if you haven't seen it, you are missing out on some serious fun chaos. You may like it or hate it, that is up to you. Eric Roberts as comic book artist named Josh, who's just trying to find his missing girlfriend in New York City. Sounds pretty straightforward, right? Well, here is where things get bonkers. Josh's search leads him to the mysterious ambulance, and surprise, this isn't just any ambulance. It's driven by some shady folks involved in a far more sinister plot than anyone could have imagined. And Eric Roberts? He nails this role as a regular guy who gets caught up in an insane situation, all while balancing the action, intensity, and just a dash of his signature charm. What's great about Eric's performance in The Ambulance is how he brings an everyman quality to a seriously over-the-top story. He's not some invincible hero, he's just a guy who's way out of his depth. You really feel for him as he races around the city trying to uncover the truth while dealing with one crazy twist after the other. The movie is a little campy, a lot of fun, and offers some laughs, but Eric Roberts' performance keeps it real even when the film goes completely off the rails. Well, obviously we cannot avoid this one, Eric and Julia Roberts' drama. Eric's rivalry with his baby sister is a separate story. It was hard to digest how quickly Julia made it big. But you know what bothered Eric the most? Not the fact that Julia was significantly more popular, but the fact that she was making an overvaluing amount of money. And we are talking about 100 times more than Eric could ever pull out of his contract. It was eating him inside out. But come on, wouldn't you not be envy of your sibling who you actually introduced into the industry and your sister's career skyrocketed while your own was left on a slow-burning stove? Right after Pretty Woman hit the theaters, Julia came over to Eric's house on his birthday, having her hair cut and bleached blonde. Eric made a remark about it and Julia went all out on him, accusing of not being supporting in her choices and that this is something needed for the upcoming movie role, etc. Pretty much this was the last time they were together as sister and brother before completely falling apart and becoming estranged. By the way, apparently when Steven Spielberg saw her wearing the very same look, he asked Julia to change her hairstyle and color because it did not fit the movie theme. Nobody heard any complaints from Julia on that request. It has gone down the dark road later on when even Julia's agent would say that nobody would speak to Eric within the movie industry if he wasn't related to Julia Roberts. In retaliation, Eric said the same thing about Julia. If it wasn't for me, there would not have been Julia Roberts. It's a statement that would come to haunt him one of many bridges he would have to rebuild in his life. Obviously, Eric wasn't invited to Julia's wedding just to avoid any troubles, according to his mother. Fortunately, Eric and Julia Roberts did reconcile back in 2004 when Eric visited Julia at the hospital after she gave birth to her twins. And they seem to be okay with each other ever since. Good for them. 1991, By the Sword. Word of caution: if you are an actual fencer, brace for an impact. This movie is not an instruction nor tutorial on how to fence. Actors tried their best, but that's as far as fencing capabilities goes, as it wasn't the focal point of the story, even though most of the movie is literally characters fencing away. Audience divided badly on this one. Some loved it, others hated it with passion. Make your own pick. 1993, Love, Honor and Obey. The Last Mafia Marriage. This is a 3 hours long TV movie and it focuses on the personal side of mafia life, diving into the emotional struggles that happens within the context of organized crime. While it's more of a low-key TV movie, it is definitely not lacking in drama. This movie might not have had the same splash as big Hollywood productions, but Eric Roberts does a great job anchoring the story. If you're into mafia movies that focus on personal emotional stakes, this one is a good pick, and Eric Roberts adds the extra flavor that makes it stand out. Here is a fun anecdote from movie The Specialist to demonstrate Stallone's work ethic. Here is how Eric describes it. So we are making The Specialist and I'm off one night while Sly working. I tell my wife, let's sneak up and watch. So we do, and nobody recognizes me. It's cool, we're sitting there when suddenly Sly sees us and says, "Hey Eric." He makes a big deal in front of the crowd and I'm thinking, yeah, whatever, but he says, "I'm going to write a scene for us tonight, and we will shoot it tomorrow." I thought it was kind of stupid, but sure enough, he wrote it that night and we shot it in the next day. This scene ended up being the one where Eric's character pulls a knife to Sly's eye. There was one rather strange incident with Stallone. While on set, he offered Eric a part in his next movie called Judge Dredd. Eric read the script and was rather interested in trying out the futuristic side of the genre, wearing cool-looking helmet for a couple of months, but when Eric's agent called him up on the offer, Stallone said that he has no idea what Roberts is talking about. Whatever it was, Eric didn't seem to hold any grudges over it. 1994 Love is a Gun is a steamy, neo-noir thriller that dives deep into obsession, mystery, and betrayal. The story follows photographer Jack, played by Eric Roberts, whose life takes a dark turn when he becomes entangled in a deadly love triangle with femme fatale and dangerous plot. If you're into psychological thrillers with 90s edge, check it out. It may be confusing to follow, lots of stories taking place at once. Also, this is a movie with Eric's wife Eliza, so it holds a very special place in his heart. Eric's turn in Nature of the Beast is a wild ride, showing off his talent for playing character who keeps you guessing. In this thriller, he teams up with Lance Henriksen and playing Adrian, a guy who seems friendly enough at first but quickly becomes part of a twisted, mind-bending story. What makes his role so interesting is how well he plays the "is he or isn't he gay?" You spend the whole movie trying to figure out if Adrian is just a guy in the wrong place at the wrong time, or if he's got something more sinister going on. Roberts has this great ability to keep things just ambiguous enough that you are constantly on edge. Nature of the Beast is a great example of Eric's doing what he does best, playing those layered, unpredictable characters that you can't take your eyes off. His chemistry with Lance really amps up the tension, turning the movie into a gripping psychological showdown. It's one of those 90s thrillers that shows why Roberts was such a go-to guy for roles that needed a little mystery and a lot of edge. Oh, and as Eric would say, Lance was perfect in that movie. Eric Roberts recalls the fun of filming The Immortals, especially enjoying his time with Chris Rock, who at that time hadn't yet reached his huge fame. It was real fun, Eric says. Chris was the most fun guy to work with. He improvised a lot of his stuff and we all just fell in love with him. He wasn't famous yet, but he was cool. 1995 movie Saved by the Light is an inspiring TV movie based on the true story of Daniel Brinkley, a man who had a near-death experience that completely changed his life. Eric Roberts stars as Daniel, capturing his journey from a self-centered, tough guy to someone profoundly moved by his brush with the afterlife. Roberts' performance brings sincerity to the role, making the emotional transformation feel authentic and relatable. If you're into powerful true stories about second chances and spiritual awakenings, this one is must to watch. 1995 movie End of the Icon is a drama that delves into the dangerous and unpredictable world of high-stakes crime. Eric Roberts takes on the role of a man caught in a web of betrayal and power struggles. With a plot full of twists and turns, Roberts delivers a performance that keeps you glued to the screen. 1996 It's My Party is a powerful, emotional movie that hits you right in the feels. It's about Nick Stark, played by Eric Roberts, a guy who finds out he's terminally ill and decides to go out on his own terms. So he throws his huge farewell party to say goodbye to his friends and family while celebrating the life he lived. Eric Roberts absolutely nailed it as Nick. His performance is raw, heartfelt, and full of moments that will stick with you. This role is often called one of his best, and for a good reason. If you're into movies that are both super touching and super real, It's My Party is one you've got to see. 1996 Doctor Who, the movie, was a big deal for fans because it introduced the Eighth Doctor, played by Paul McGann. But here is where it gets even better. Eric Roberts steps in as the Master, the Doctor's iconic and totally evil nemesis. Eric Roberts absolutely owns it as the Master, bringing his signature charm and a little extra wickedness to the role. Whether he's been smooth or downright menacing, he's a blast to watch. The movie is packed with action, time travel, shenanigans, and plenty of drama, making it great watch for any sci-fi fan. If you have never seen Eric Roberts as a villain, this is the perfect place to start. One thing, scenes at the hospital reminds me of the original Terminator with Arnold. I think writers took a page from James Cameron's screenplay. Eric was also in the 1996 The Cable Guy, quick cameo as himself within a movie ad playing on TV, just a fun fact. Next year, 1997, Eric took part in few high-profile TV series like Frasier, The Odyssey, Oz, and C-16 FBI. 1999 Purgatory is a unique and super cool mix of Western and supernatural vibes. This story follows a gang of outlaws who stumble into a strange little town that seems too perfect to be real. And that's because it's a holding ground for legendary gunslingers looking to redeem themselves before their final judgment. Eric plays Blackjack, the leader of the outlaw gang. If the movie sounds familiar, you may have seen it on the list of Peter Stormare performances. He was in it as well. TV cartoon series Spawn. It was a big deal at the time for its mature themes and edgy animation. First one for Eric as a voice-over actor, though only one episode in season 3. In 2000, first notable appearance was in TV series Falcon, about an FBI agent in Brooklyn who goes undercover in the mafia. Eric was in 4 episodes playing Raymond Ritchie. There will be an avalanche of roles going forward with Eric taking a backseat, well, more like a third row in most of his appearances. The lead role actor era for Eric in big Hollywood production movies was pretty much over, but there will be a few exceptions. Most lasting TV series Eric was part of was Less Than Perfect, 65 episodes in total. For a few years it was nice and steady income filler, and as always, Eric had blast with it as Will Butler. Going quantity. Eric began his career like many movie stars, making 1 to 4 movies a year, earning a comfortable living. However, the transition from film to digital in the 90s changed the landscape of the industry. With the rise of independent studios and digital filmmaking, Eric's wife and manager noticed an influx of offers pouring in. By the mid-90s, Eric was receiving 30 to 50 offers daily from around the globe. In 1992, Eric's wife Eliza asked him what he would want to do every day if he could choose. Eric's response? Be on set. What seemed like a far-fetched dream then became his reality. Eric embraced the arrival of independent projects, finding joy in the diverse roles and the chance to work with the passionate filmmakers. His schedule now involves being on set almost daily, often for short stints for 3 to 4 days. Eric finds no difference between his studio movies and independent films. To him, being on set, making art, and doing what he loves is the same regardless of the scale of the production. He's accessible and open to roles that intrigue him, often facilitated through his wife's management. Despite the volume of work, learning lines isn't an issue for Eric. For overnight turnarounds, he uses cue cards, a method that works seamlessly for him. He finds earwigs used by actors like Johnny Depp and Robert Downey Jr. distracting, as hearing lines in his ear disrupts his focus. Cue cards, on the other hand, allow him to glance, deliver, and stay in character effortlessly. Reuniting with Mickey Rourke for Spawn. Eric loved the reunion with Mickey for 2002 Spawn, especially after their earlier collaboration with Greenwich Village. It was great fun, he says, clearly enjoying the chance to work with Mickey again. They have strong bond and Eric admits, "I love Mickey and we'll love each other." The fun came with how Eric's role in Spawn came to life. When the director suggested a shirtless scene with a bunch of girls around him, Eric was quick to offer an alternative. "You know what," said Roberts, "that has been done. Let's go the other way. I'll be gay and have a boyfriend." The director agreed and it became part of the movie. To this day, Eric and Mickey are still in touch and calling each other every other week. It has been a while since Eric took a lead role in highly rated movie, 2005 Gravesend. And it's a dark and emotional mystery thriller that dives into tragedy, secrets, and how far people will go for the truth. Eric plays Tarkington Alexander Graves, or Tag, a wealthy financier whose world is shattered when his son has been taken. His character's grief and determination drive much of the story as the investigation uncovers the dark underbelly of the town of Gravesend. 2006 Fatal Desire. This is probably the last film where Eric plays throughout the whole movie. Soon enough, he will be taking a few minutes screen time roles, making 50+ appearances a year. It will be harder and harder to find gems in that pile of hay. The Dark Knight. Eric's experience on the set of The Dark Knight was magical, working with the top-tier director and actors in the futuristic set. Being on the Dark Knight set was a dream come true. It was just a great experience. Basically, the reason he liked it so much was because Roberts is a movie geek, and a huge one at it. At first, director told them that they're going to shoot all Chicago stuff for The Dark Knight in Chicago, and all of Gotham City stuff in Pinewood. But there was a twist. They did not go to Pinewood. They went to an old Zeppelin hangar that has been closed since 1919 and only reopened for Gotham City set. As Eric recalls, it was as if you were walking right into the Gotham City. That's how real it was. His favorite story about The Dark Knight is when he first arrived on the scene wearing his $2,000 suit on this incredible set in the old Zeppelin hangar. It was amazing, over-the-top set of Gotham City with 5 cameras rolling at once. So Eric is ready to act, here comes action, and then immediately after director yells in a big megaphone, "Cut!" The loudest cut Roberts ever heard. Few moments of that silence, and then Chris Nolan says, "Eric Roberts, don't be funny." That was Eric's favorite note and he isn't kidding. Chris Nolan is telling Roberts not to be funny. Eric was never before hired nor mistaken for a comedian. Well, to Roberts, if Chris Nolan believes he is funny, then he made it to the very top of Hollywood Olympus. The magic of the set left an impression. The first day I walked in there, it's all Gotham City. Oh my god, takes your breath away. Me and Gary Oldman had so much fun being children on that set. It was just heaven, especially for a movie geeks. We just had so much fun. It had traffic lights, everything you could have, even a candy shop. That is how you spend money, and Nolan did it because he could. You may also find Eric in TV series Entourage, single episode as himself, filming The Expendables, working with Sylvester Stallone and the rest of the crew on 2010 The Expendables felt like a boys' camp. People often miss out on just how funny and smart Sly really is. In Eric's own words, people think he is Rocky, but he isn't. He's funny and smart. As for the role in The Expendables, Eric says it was an official studio offer, however he suspects Stallone might have had something to do with it, for old time's sake. It's a Sly movie after all. He can do whatever he wants to, including pointing out who to cast for any roles in it. By the way, Stallone was supposed to have The Expendables and a list of his bodies tattooed over his chest, but the fact is, you don't see Sylvester's bare-chested at no point during the movie. He always wears some kind of shirt. The reason for it was terrible accident at the gym during one of the morning trainings. Expendable actors would hit the gym early in the morning, between 6 and 7 a.m. to get all pumped up before the shoot, which would start at 7 a.m. So Stallone is on the incline bench, doing his chest routine, but decided to put a lot more extra weight on the bar. Next thing you know, Sly is screaming out loud, weight hits the floor, Sly rolls off the bench, and his entire chest simply goes into black color. He popped one of his chest muscles off the actual bone, and it needed extensive repair to heal. When you are 65 years old, try to be a little gentle with the weight and don't bounce it off the chest like the 20 years old. If you have time and want to watch something weird, confusing but strangely engaging, try 2018 Guns, Drugs and Dirty Money, though Eric is just a comic book writer and a story reader. TV mini-series Bullet in the Face. When I thought I have seen it all, I was wrong. You see, those type of videos leads me to research material I have not seen before, and sometimes I would come across something unusual. In this case, it's Bullet in the Face, an off-the-rails series that I should not be watching, and yet I am. I will pause writing the script because I need to watch yet another episode. We'll be back. 2015 Las Vegas Story is a drama that investigates the intertwined lives of an escort, a stripper, and a dealer in Sin City. Maria, an escort supporting her 4 kids, faces a turning point when 2 friends from her past reappear, pushing her to rethink her life choices. Eric Roberts plays Walter. If you're into characters-driven stories set against the vibrant backdrop of Las Vegas, the Las Vegas Story is something you may want to watch. 2015 There Is Many Like Us. This is a documentary about World War II and prison camps. Heavy subject for many people. Working on Righteous Gemstones. Eric describes his time on Righteous Gemstones as his favorite job ever. Working with Danny McBride was an unforgettable experience. He's one of the funniest people on the planet, Eric states, and working with John Goodman, Eric describes as we were in love, artistically. Though improvisation was sometimes a part of the process, Eric notes that the scripts were so well written that there was often no need to veer off script. You didn't have to, you didn't want to, he says. This is how well it was done. To sum up Eric's experience on Righteous Gemstones, walking onto a set with guys who are going to hit it just like you are is a feeling like no other. Eric Roberts on narrating William Faulkner in The Past Is Never Dead, the story of William Faulkner. Eric explains that his love for William started when he was young. My first love affair as a reader during puberty was William Faulkner, he says. As he grew up and became an actor, he was offered the role of Faulkner, and though he initially hesitated, he couldn't turn it down. You can't argue with the fact of the writing, Eric says, recognizing the power of Faulkner words as major reason he agreed to play him. It was difficult to capture William's southern accent because there are a lot of different types of accents. Faulkner had a very specific one from Savannah, which made it harder to get just right. On top of that, William's struggles with alcohol were tough to portray. He was a drunk, but he didn't act drunk, Eric says, noting the difficulty of playing a character who was dealing with such a personal issue without it becoming too obvious on screen. Despite the challenges, Eric looks back at the role as dream come true. It was a lot of fun, he says. feeling grateful and honored to have been offered such an important part. Even though the role was tough, it was something he was really proud to take on. Eric Roberts on auditions and Celebrity Island. When it comes to auditions, Eric does it every day. The convenience of at-home auditions is something he appreciates, especially since many of his bosses are much younger than him. They don't know who I am, says Eric, but their parents do from old movies they used to watch. His time on Celebrity Island was a drag, due to the 30-day with no food. I was dying, and I cannot be held responsible for my behavior, Eric confesses. I lost my mind a little bit. I think everybody does if you don't eat for 30 days. By the way, when it comes to movie reviews, Eric does not read movie reviews that he was in. He doesn't care what critics have to say, he has his own opinion on how good or bad was it. Same goes for other actors and movies that he likes. Eric wouldn't bother with knowing what experts had to say. If it's a good movie to Eric, he will call it exactly that. Great movie, man. On big egos in Hollywood. Here is a story. Back when Eric was at the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London, his roommate dared him to invite Laurence Olivier to their senior play. Eric waited outside a restroom, bold move, and when Olivier walked out, Eric mustered the courage to introduce himself. Olivier, being the class act he was, gave Eric a moment of his time, even though he couldn't attend the play. That brief encounter left a lasting impression on Eric, showing him how just a few seconds of attention can make somebody's day. That meeting with Olivier shaped how Eric treats his fans. Whether it's signing autographs or chatting at conventions, Eric's all in. Fans come up to him all the time and he loves it. I'll give you a minute of my time, he says, because those moments matter. Most cherished roles by Eric. When asked about the role he cherished the most, Eric Roberts doesn't narrow it down to just one. He mentions several, each significant for different reasons, whether it was about a specific time in his life, his connection with the director, or the uniqueness of the project. Here is a breakdown of his top picks. Number 1. King of the Gypsies. His first movie holds a special place in his heart. It was the biggest break of my life, Eric explains. It's the role that launched his career and set the stage for everything that followed. Number 2. Paul's Case. He considers this his smallest yet impactful good movie, highlighting the intimate and understated nature of the project. Star 80. Described as the best docudrama ever made, Eric is proud of how the film tackled a real-life story with depth and nuance. Despite not being officially nominated for an award, many people mistakenly believe he was, which speaks to the impact of his performance. Number 4. The Pope of Greenwich Village. He calls this film the best twist of character ever done successfully. It's a standout role where he brought a unique flair to the character, making it memorable for audience. Number 5. Runaway Train. This film is especially close to his heart because he had a hand in changing the character and the changes were embraced, resulting in a performance that resonated with both critics and viewers. Number 6. Love is a Gun. A personal project made with his wife Eliza. This film holds sentimental value for him. Purgatory. Working with Sam Shepard on this film was a significant experience, adding it to his list of cherished roles. And the last one, which makes it number 8. Final Analysis, with Richard Gere and Kim Basinger. Narrowing it down, when asked to choose just 2 roles, Eric picks King of the Gypsies for its monumental impact on his career, and Star 80 alongside Runaway Train for their critical acclaim and the way they showcased his range as an actor. Does he have any regrets in film choices? Eric admits there are few movies he wishes could be deleted forever, though he keeps the specifics under wraps, simply calling them nameless and hard to believe I was in it. Here is a little more on career regrets. There was one missed opportunity due to underpreparedness. He recalls a day on a TV series where his character, though intermittent, was crucial to the storyline. Given a rewrite the night before, Eric admits he didn't give it the attention it deserved. Upon arriving on set, he realized too late that his lines spanned a page and a half with no cues except his own words. Oops, he admits, recognizing the importance of being fully prepared. Unfortunately, this oversight resulted in the show producers not to invite him back. Despite his success, Roberts remains remarkably grounded. He's moved past what he calls his early perfectionist phase, recognizing that perfection is impossible. Instead, he focuses on the joy of the craft itself, noting that acting gets me out of bed in the morning and has been his life constant companion. In an industry that often rewards playing it safe, Eric Roberts has built a career by taking risks, embracing complexity, and remaining unapologetically himself. His story isn't just about acting, it's about the courage to forge your own path, even when the path leads you away from conventional success. Whether playing villains, complicated heroes, or characters that defy classification, Roberts has remained true to his vision of what an actor should be, someone who brings something entirely unique to every role. In doing so, he has carved out a place in Hollywood that belongs to him alone. Favorite genres. Eric Roberts loves acting in two specific genres: Western American pre-Civil War and Eastern American pre-Depression. He is drawn to these settings because of the cloth, the attitude, and the wealth, or lack of it, that defines the era. He enjoys the dramatic shifts in character you explore in these times, adding a sense of rawness and history. It's just so cool, he says. When you put on those costumes, it feels like you're young again, like you're playing a general or a soldier. What about horror genre? When it comes to horror, Eric admits he's not as easily impressed. It has got to scare me, he says, admitting that he can get easily disappointed by films that fail to deliver. Despite that, Eric recalls some classic films that left a lasting impact on him. His all-time favorite horror movie are the 1960 film The Tingler with Peter Lorre and The Wolfman with Lon Chaney Jr. Both films had such a strong effect that they have stuck with him. He even remembers being so scared of the Wolfman model he and his dad put together that he couldn't sleep with it in the room. Eric Roberts has been on the road for the past 20 to 25 years, just constantly moving 9 to 11 months out of the year. His hobbies like horse riding, collecting coins and stamps, all put on pause. Why? Because life threw him an amazing curveball. He became a grandfather. And let me tell you, he is loving it. He jokes about having a common enemy with his grandkids, the parents. Classic grandparents moves, right? Now, his oldest grandchild, Georgia, who's 5, joined him recently on a pretty big night for Eric. She came to watch him on Dancing with the Stars. Yeah, you heard that right. Eric Roberts on Dancing with the Stars. The guy has been in front of cameras his whole life, but dancing on live TV? That was something else. He says he's long since gotten over any fear of audience or cameras, decades ago in fact. But this? Terrifying. He was scared stiff, even though he did not really give a damn about what people thought during his movie days. Also, mind you, he had both his hips replaced back in 2015, so this was truly a challenge to him at first. Eric used to watch Dancing with the Stars occasionally because of his wife's favorite show. So he'd pop in, catch a beat and think, man, these people can't dance. And then bam, he's on the show himself saying, alright, people might make fun of me, but who cares? Except a big part of him did care. He admits it was all about doing something special for his wife Eliza, because in his words, he owes her his life. How sweet is that? Now here is a wild flashback. About 19 years ago, Dancing with the Stars wanted him on, but he couldn't make it because of a movie shoot in China. He didn't even end up filming that day, so fast forward, when the offer came around again, Eric couldn't say no, especially since it was for his wife's favorite show, and boy, was she excited when he said yes. Eric's wife Eliza isn't just a supportive partner, she's his biggest fan. Once a casting director, she discovered some of the biggest stars like George Clooney and Halle Berry. And the story of how they met, it's straight out of rom-com. They both were on the same plane, and they both had a script to read. By chance, they both finished reading at the same time, so naturally they started to talk. Soon enough, Eric asked for her number. She was in the relationship, but Eric was smooth about it, saying he just wanted to meet her dad, who happened to be his favorite screenwriter. She laughed and gave him a number. Here is the kicker. When Eric called her that night, none other than Jeffrey Dean Morgan answered the phone. Yeah, Negan from The Walking Dead. And only because he recognized Eric's voice, he passed the phone to Eliza. That phone call that changed Eric's life forever. As he said, if Eliza would not have picked it up, this would have been the end of that story. It has been over 30 years and Eric is still head over heels for his wife. He falls in love with Eliza every few years and still chasing her around the house like it's a day one. Eric Roberts' journey through the whirlwind of Hollywood success is quite a tale. When fame hits, it came with all the trappings: limousines waiting at airport, VIP access to clubs, the best seats at the restaurant, luxurious hotels and flashy cars. Yet, for Eric, these perks were never the driving force behind the choices as an actor. Reflecting on his first day on a movie set, Eric recalls the excitement and anxiety that consumed him. He had landed his first big role, and the weight of the reality kept him awake the entire night before shooting began. The morning of, when it was time to head to the studio in Queens, a car awaited him downstairs. Instead of riding in the town car, Eric chose to follow it on his motorcycle, a decision that would lead to a memorable encounter. Arriving at the studio, he was met by Dina De Laurentiis and Fran Pearson. Dina, spotting Eric on his motorcycle, erupted in frustration. "What are you doing on motorcycle? You're making a movie for me," roared director. The public schooling left Eric embarrassed, with no one stepping in to ease the tension. You know how much directors love to lose leading actor to some kind of accident on the way to the set? Despite the glamour that came with his growing fame, Eric never sought out the luxurious lifestyle. It was something he noticed and appreciated, but he remained grounded. He and his wife would marvel at the lavish hotel rooms and breathtaking views. The irony of receiving a $1,000 bottle of champagne when they didn't drink wasn't lost on them, and they found humor in the extravagance. Eric enjoyed the fun and luxury but kept it in perspective. For him, the trappings of fame were a temporary bow on the package, not the essence of his career. He knew the importance of staying grounded, understanding that the glamour could disappear as quickly as it arrived. His journey, though, the heights and lows of fame, with its blend of excitement and absurdity, was embraced with humor and a clear sense of what truly matters. Eric Roberts started out as a perfectionist who probably drove himself crazy trying to get everything just right. But over time, he figured out something pretty profound. Sometimes the magic happens when you just show up and give it your all best that day, perfect or not. Eric admits that he has never fallen into that trap of comparing himself to other actors. "I have always been too arrogant for that," he jokes, explaining that he has been confident in his acting abilities since he was young. Having started acting at 4 and feeling he became a great actor at 14, Eric has always believed in his talent. He emphasizes the importance of knowing one's strengths and not wasting energy on comparison. You know what's really wild? Every morning Eric still gets excited about acting. It's not about the fame or the money, it's about the pure joy of creating something unique. In an industry full of people trying to fit in, Roberts has spent his whole career standing out. Hollywood has got plenty of pretty faces and safe bets. But Eric Roberts? He's that wild card who reminds us that sometimes the most interesting path is the one you make yourself. He's like that friend who never quite fits in, but makes everything more interesting just by being there. Is he the biggest name in Hollywood? No. Does he have a shelf full of Oscars? Not really. But man, has he made his mark. In a town that's all about following the recipe for success, Eric Roberts went ahead and wrote his own cookbook. And you've got to respect that kind of guts. So next time you're watching a movie and Eric Roberts pops up, remember, you're not just seeing an actor. You are seeing a guy who has been doing it his way since day one. And honestly, Hollywood is a whole lot more interesting because of it. Thank you for watching and we'll see you next time.